Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Habaita. Today, I am so excited to be joined by Ori Levy, who is the founder and CEO of Vision. And I'm super excited to talk to you, Ori, today because of your mission to really prevent accidents that happen on motorbikes. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
And I can definitely see by your background that you are
Mhm.
a passionate motorcycle rider. So
Indeed.
maybe start with that. Tell me a little bit about where did you come up with the idea to kind of prevent motorcycle accidents?
Yeah, sure. Well, look, it's not a secret that any vehicle right now around the world tries to be smart. We look at Tesla, we look at some Chinese brands that are coming with new technologies inside, and it's obvious that if something happens for passenger vehicles, it's supposed to happen down the road for motorcycles. But when I basically was starting the journey at that time, a friend of mine and we had a discussion about what we can do with the capabilities that we had at our background, and our background usually was about fusion of sensors, really understanding like different sensors, fusing them together, understanding what's going on. And he told me, look, when I ride a bike, I actually don't see anything from behind. And I said, wow, that's an interesting idea, because obviously there's so many fatalities in two-wheelers and motorcycles. It's like it's a very exposed vehicle. In fact, the stats are saying that you have 28 times more chances to die in a motorcycle accident than a car occupant. So I said, okay, let's do both front and rear, and let's bring this like the full system, 360-degree system that can actually save lives. And he told me, look, you're really stupid. It's going to be a very, very difficult system to build. And he went for a vacation, and after he came back, I already had a pitch deck, and I went to the investors and presented the idea. And we actually raised only on the idea. And from there, we were running.
Wow. Okay. So the concept here is that your friend said to you, I don't have any visual from behind. Was that the issue? Like even the mirrors that they were using, like there was a certain area
Well,
able to see. Can you explain that a little
yeah,
bit more?
well, sure. When you ride a bike, actually riding a bike is a completely different activity. People really don't realize that. They think it's like a passenger vehicle. You ride, you look at the mirrors, you do all that. That's not the way how you ride in most countries, especially think about Latin America, think about India, China. That's not how you ride the bike. Now, the mirrors on the bike are actually very small. In fact, what you need to do, you use your head to scan the environment and understand the dangers around the bike. So the visibility is very low. It's very difficult to see things. And you're at the constant movement. So think about the psychology that you always need to move your head and grasp the realities of the road and then act based on those realities. It's very difficult. So with that, the visibility from behind is problematic. The issue of understanding what is happening in front of you is also there, because the traffic changes all the time. You need to calculate how to go. You don't ride as a passenger vehicle on one lane. You actually zigzag within the traffic, which is the most difficult maneuverability to catch up algorithmically and from software perspective in that sense. And that's why I realized this is a very difficult problem to solve, the one that is not going to have an easy barrier of entrance for anybody else to come in. And our expertise is actually very good here, because we are coming with that fusion of different sensors and understanding how we can blend them together. And from the business perspective, you have 400,000 fatalities a year due to two motorcycles. So 400,000 people are dying every year. So of course you want to solve this problem.
And just share with you that my daughter is a paramedic with MADA and my husband is a doctor. And they call a motorcycle, which is like in their industry, a donor cycle,
Of course.
because
Of course.
so many accidents, and like every time my daughter comes back after a motorcycle accident, she's like, it is so awful, because you think about it, you have nothing to protect you, right? So
Yep.
the accidents are, the fatalities, and there's also tons that are not fatalities but terrible outcomes, right?
Oh, that's even worse. Yeah.
That's terrible, and the stories she has are just horrific, So I totally understand why and how. So maybe just explain a little bit about, okay, so how does it work? If I'm a motorcycle rider, what do I purchase? Where do I put it? and what are the sensors doing to help me as I'm shifting lanes and moving my head? Maybe you can just explain that.
Yeah, sure. So really we had to think about everything from the beginning because, sometimes when you launch your business, then you have somebody else that did something very similar and you maybe come up with some sort of innovation. So at least you have some sort of similarities. In our case, we
Right.
didn't have anything. We had to invent everything from the beginning. How you mount that on the bike, what type of the alerts we need to give, how the alerts will work. And if you're in a passenger vehicle, then you have a quiet environment that you can get the alerts and understand. In our case, we're in the noisy environment with the helmet on our head. So how you actually get those alerts? So we had to really build the product from the ground up. And the idea is very simple, actually. I mean, after you look at the product, whatever I will tell you right now, you would for sure say, well, it's obvious that you're going to do that, right? But it took us a while to check everything and test it and develop it and validate that this is actually solves the problem and it's very simple and intuitive in the way how it operates. So in essence, you get two cameras, one at the front, one at the rear. They're very, very small cameras. In fact, I have one I can show you right now here. So this is the camera, and this is my airport case. So I can lay out it here,
Wow.
and you can see how small
Funny.
it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So one camera goes at the front, one camera goes at the rear, and then we
Okay.
have a small main unit. This is the main unit, again, very, very small, not big at all.
Wow.
Okay, that you
Okay.
usually position under the seat of the biker. And
Under the
by
seat.
those cameras, we scan the environment almost 360 degrees around the bike, and we understand the maneuverability of the bike. So even if it vibrates, tilts up, leans to the left and to the right, or zigzags within the traffic, we actually build a very unique predictive trajectory of the bike with all the, let's say, metrics of the road and participants of the road, and then we calculate the potential use cases. So the issues that we are tackling are issues such as frontal collision warning, violation of, say, safer distance to a preceding vehicle, blind spot, somebody stuck in a blind area left and right, dangerous overtake, somebody overtakes with very high speed. And why is that? That's exactly we don't see anything from behind. Because if I'm looking to the right, clearing the path and starting to lean, but I didn't see this guy coming very fast from behind, that's a death. Okay. Then additional two alerts that we have are real collision warning and aggressive braking. So if we aggressively brake, we actually open up ourselves to potential collision from behind, so that we also understand and alert the environment on the potential alerts. So how the actual alerts are being given to the rider, they're given via visual cues. And you can see at my background, there's a mirror there, right? And that mirror has a smaller yellow dot. So it's similar in what you have in passenger vehicles, but we actually build a much bigger language. So you have
Wow.
a visual cues that telling you yellow color means somebody in blind spot and somebody overtakes you with a high speed from behind. Red color in the front, constant red color, it means you're violating a safer distance to a preceding vehicle. Blinking red color means a frontal collision. So it's so intuitive and very simple, and it's quiet. It doesn't beat you. It doesn't make you crazy. You ride, you concentrate on the road, and every alert comes in your peripheral vision, and then you react to it.
By the way, I mean, I know you're building this for motorcycles, but this would work on any vehicle, right? I mean,
Of course.
I have a daughter who's a new driver, and I would love, I mean, I just got a new electric car, so I can just share. It has amazing safety features, and it does that beeping, right? And the beeping is so annoying that we ended up turning it off because we couldn't
Of
drive with it.
course.
So there I lost my
Of course.
safety, right? So now I lost my safety features. There's no light situation. And this could actually, like, I would love it for our car. So I don't know if that's possible, but we could talk about that after.
It is possible.
So in turn, yes, you do. So that's what I'm saying. Like, I think it's great for motorcycles for sure, but I think it could also work on any kind of vehicle. So it's really interesting to me that there was no solution on the marketplace for this. There was nothing even. I understand that, it's a different product or a different solution, but it solves this problem. So this problem was never addressed by any automotive company in the world. It's shocking.
Actually, it's not shocking. I mean, look, it's a blessing and a curse. Let's talk about why it's a blessing. It's a blessing. You're first to the market, and Ride Vision is the first to the market. It's the first commercial product that came out. It's not too shocking because the motorcycle manufacturers are about 10 years behind the passenger vehicles. And you would think that, what is a motorcycle? It's like kind of stupid thing. It's two wheels and some chain in the middle and some engine, whatever. Yes, but because of that, the vehicle has a lot of issues from technology perspective. You cannot put too much weight. You have to create technology that is very robust because the vibrations of the bike are killers and they can kill the electronics and they can kill the optics and so on and so on. So there's lots of challenges that a motorcycle is a simplistic vehicle actually introduced, and that's why the technology comes there about 10 years after the passenger vehicles. So from that perspective, that was my vision of saying, look, let's be a bigger fish in the smaller pond instead of being a smaller fish in a huge pond of passenger vehicles that everybody tries to do the same. But it's
Yeah.
also a curse, right? Because it's a curse because you have to educate the market. And we absolutely paid our toll for that. Okay. Absolutely. We had to go to all the manufacturers and talk to them and explain them. And some were skeptical. And there's a startup out of Israel, a small startup, it's not simple. But we are coming right now to the point where I think the market picks up and understands and actually takes the solution. And of course, really appreciates already a very mature solution that is on the ground.
So talk to me a little bit about that now. What is your business model? Because I saw on your website you have a shop. So you are selling things direct to consumer, but is your business model really more B2B, going to the manufacturers, going
Yeah,
to fleet owners, right? That can
sure,
influence all of this. So
sure.
they're, I'm just thinking in Israel of all the Wolt delivery guys,
Yeah,
and I'm sure across the world, all the motorcycle delivery people, right? So
sure,
is that your
sure.
model or is your model direct to consumer?
No, no. So direct to consumer is a model that we do use, but that's not the goal. I mean, we used it just to, let's say, fill the gap until the market comes to the right point, right? And actually, I'm happy I did it because there was a huge concern initially because Israeli startups usually don't do direct to consumer. And they don't do consumer electronics, right? So they do software very well. They do some sort of sensor. So let's say, unique sensors, whatever. But the reason I thought it will be a good idea initially is because I understood the market will need to have this education, and we will actually have a proven product that I can show. And that makes a completely difference than if I would be coming with some sort of deck or even just a software
Right.
library to the right. I have a real product that people install, and you can watch the feedbacks. Even here in Israel, people calling my product life-saving product. They're really happy about it. They move it from one bike to another. So if they purchase the bike, they move it from the older bike to a new bike just to ensure that they have the system with them. They don't want to kind of remove it anymore. So that actually creates stickiness and even word of mouth. I have people calling in saying, I got it a recommendation from a friend. Can I buy the product? So the step of going to the consumer was to fill the gap. But of course, the end goal is the manufacturers, right? Manufacturers, they will incorporate that into the series development, and then the product will go already pre-built in the model. So you can buy your new motorcycle with the right vision solution inside. It will still take time because they are, as I said, 10 years behind. And usually, even whatever you buy today, even in the passenger vehicle, it's actually a vehicle that was already designed 4 years ago. So that's a cycle of automotive. It's a very long one, unfortunately, but that's the end goal. In the meantime, we do consumer, we do fleet operators. We actually also have data that we can extract out of the system that even can improve your skill set of the riding. Okay, so we provide that additional information of understanding how you ride, capturing your video in terms of evidence recording if something happened. Okay, you can show that to your insurance. You can, if you are suddenly have some claims or whatever, you can use that. And you have this data that you can improve your skill set and you can grade and rank the riders as well. So if I'm a fleet operator, not only I will reduce the accidents by installing the system, but I will benefit from data that can help me to manage claims and to excel my riders down the road.
I actually think that this would be a great sell to insurance companies directly. Like they'll say,
Sure,
listen, I'll insure you, but you have to install these cameras, right? Because think about how many claims they could win, right? And not have to pay out. It's in
sure,
their best interest to
sure.
invest. So have you attempted that?
Yeah, I have been there, tried that. Look, it's heavily dependent on the country, by the way. So
Yeah.
the obviously it's very logical what you're saying right now, but it's heavily dependent. So for example, in the US, actually, that is a minus, not a plus, because there are so many
Mm,
insurance companies in the US and they're competing on the same customer. So now
mm.
demanding something makes them less
Yeah.
appealing
Oh,
from
yeah.
somebody that
Yeah.
doesn't demand. So it's
Right.
counterintuitive, right? But I for sure can tell you, and we do have some insurance companies that work with us and even provide some discounts on their premiums,
Yeah,
that the moment they're getting the evidence recording and the moment
for
they
sure.
use that to manage the claims, they reduce a great deal of their claims.
There has to be some incentive for them, like a reduction of your
Sure,
premiums when you install this, right? But it definitely
sure.
does make, I just think the automotive route, like you said, is such a long tail, right?
It's a
To get
long,
them,
yeah.
so just in the meantime, because this is such an amazing product and you need to get it out to as many people as possible. And I'm just curious, you had said that at the beginning, it took a lot of testing and learning. Maybe can you share a little bit about that journey? Like, how long did it actually take? It seems like you said, I understand the complexity behind it and all the different challenges that you were facing. So, in essence, from when you
No.
decided to do this to when it actually was a product, how long did that take?
That's a great question because look, my background, as I mentioned, is the fusion of sensors and algorithmic implementation. And prior to Right Vision, I was a CEO of a company that was dealing with visual recognition as well. So really a lot of experience in kind of recognition, image retrieval, understanding of the visual elements. But building a company that actually does hardware, software,
Yeah,
security,
yeah,
optics, mobile, and this is a totally different animal. So the beginning was not simple at all because, as I said, there's no product to compare. So we had to understand how you mount the product, how this camera that they showed to you, how it's going to be installed on the bike. We had to understand that. And this is a mechanical setup. That's nothing to do with the software or the algorithms that we try to solve, right? So you have to understand how you actually mount that and how big it's supposed to be and whether it supports the vibration yes or no, and so and so on. That's one path that you have to do baby steps until you reach out to a particular prototype. The other path was the software, because when you look at the bike riding and suddenly, doing like this and then zigzagging through the traffic and accelerating and deaccelerating, and you look at that and say, well, this is not how I drive my passenger vehicle. So, what I'm doing that. So you had to gather lots of information, lots of videos, lots of actual data, actual rides, and then analyze them. So we went through a lot of process of analyzing the riding, talking to different riding instructors that can tell us whether it's a good riding behavior, bad riding behavior, understanding the physics of riding, and then building the algorithms that look at the environment, perceive the environment, understand the environment, and start to predict the trajectory of the bike. And that also involves a lot of like baby steps of you putting the software on some sort of prototype, you test it, you actually get the data, then you review it, you do it again and again and again, and you end up for about, let's say, 2 years doing the baby steps from products perspective, which is like a mechanical perspective, to software perspective that they're eventually end up coming together. So since our inception in 2018, we had the first prototype, the real prototypes, I would say, not the ones that were maybe glued with our, I don't know, saliva or whatever. Okay, so the real ones started to come at around 2021, beginning of 2021. So it's almost 3 years, right? And we start selling the product, the final product, the second half of 21. So just at the end of the Corona, that I remember. And then immediately we actually saw an interesting, okay, that's, by the way, it's completely different challenge. You bring a new product to the market. Nobody have seen that. How you market that, how you sell it, it's a completely different story, right?
exactly.
That's the blue ocean penetration. But the already initial product that we got, I have to tell you, because we did a very good diligent job, it was really good.
Wow.
I can give you lots of feedbacks of real customers coming and writing and telling me, look, it saved me here. It helped me there.
Wow.
So that was amazing.
Are you able to kind of measure that? Like how many you
Yeah.
prevented? What's the data on that?
Yeah, that's actually very high accuracy. So we operate in the terminology for this technology is called ADAS, Advanced Driver Assistance System, in our case, Advanced Rider Assistance System. But the accuracy, there is some industry metrics that you should use. Everything above 98% of accuracy. So assuming you have 100 use cases in which you need to avoid the collision, you need to alert on 98 of them. So we are close to 99. Okay, we really are very accurate despite of all those crazy maneuverabilities of the bikes. Now in the real time, the actual bikers that ride, that I don't have as real kind of data, but I do have a lot of research that was done already in Ride Vision, and we show more than 60% reduction of accidents. We have a research that was done in France by Eiffel University, research that was done by Continental in Germany, and we have a small research done here in Israel. So more than 60% reduction of accidents.
That's unbelievable. Think about how many lives that is if you can get this on every motorcycle. It's just
Absolutely. I'm a
it's
true
unbelievable.
believer, but
Yeah.
but it's easy. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So tell me a little bit about that marketing. What did you do to introduce? This is a big thing that a lot of, our listeners or other CEOs also listening to understand, you have this product. It took you X amount of years to build it, 2 to 3 years. You're in a position where no one really has a competing product. So that means that you have to educate the market as to why this is needed, that this is even something that's possible. How did you go about with that? Was it through trade shows? Was it through speaking engagements? What was your strategy with that?
Yeah, pretty much everything. So I would say though the most important lesson, I'll say the lesson first, is what works here doesn't necessarily work in another country. Okay, and that's
Yeah,
actually a very good lesson, and
yeah,
especially in the product that I have. I don't know about, I mean, digital products in my previous company. It was also global business. But it was a digital product. It was a software-only product. It was much easier. Maybe on the more physical product, slightly different. But I'll give you a few things that I did here. Of course, I worked extensively with riders groups, with some influencers within the riding community, I would say. Of course, conferences, as you said, targeting on Facebook. By the way, you really also need to find the right social media. So in my case, the actual, let's say, first customers are the bikers that already understand that their lives are important. So those are not, let's say, young people. Hence, Facebook was the most important tool to use to penetrate, right? Versus, for example, TikTok, by the way, which I see right now picking up. So TikTok is also a very good one, but you absolutely need to find the right social media tool to do it. So Facebook campaigns, different conferences, a little bit of articles and freebies where you kind of provide the product, people use that, install it, experience, and so on and so on. And eventually, if your product is good and your service is good, that is a sticking point. People start talking about you and especially deliver the value. They understand the value. By the way, once they ride, they usually come back and say, okay, I don't
wow.
understand how I didn't do it before.
Yeah,
But it doesn't necessarily mean the same structure works in the US. Now, I think what succeeded here is because Israel is a smaller country. So from geography perspective, it's easier to do it. When you need to do it in the US, then you probably need to limit yourself in California, let's say, or in some other smaller places to spark and then maybe to expand.
and that's also more educating. So was your mentality, which is so interesting to me because you, like you said, you do have that B2C element. So was your education more on the customer end, on the B2C end rather than the B2B end, right? Because this
Yes,
Instagram and social is mostly, individuals and customers. That it's very interesting. But you kind of did
sure.
B2C to B2B.
Sure, because as I mentioned, we had to fill the gap. So the point was, look, if we fill the gap and educate the customer, the consumer will put the pressure on the manufacturer to have more functions like that. Okay. So it's a circle, right? It will go around.
Time that takes time, to get to
Of
that point.
course, of
Sure.
course, of course,
Yeah,
of
yeah.
course.
So what countries are you now in as of today?
I think the biggest, of course, is Israel. It's obvious, right? Because we started here, but we have Germany, we have Switzerland, we have Australia, we have Singapore, we have even India, a little
Wow.
bit of Vietnam, Canada, we have Brazil. So there are pockets right now that's coming up and building up, which is nice. Nice. So we are global right now in terms of the consumer, and in terms of the B2B, it's also pretty easy because there's a concentration of manufacturers in particular countries. And by far, the biggest one today is India, of course, which is another challenge because then you actually need to provide a very low cost solution that will appeal to everybody. But the good news, we made it because to make something for a motorcycle, you have to build it low cost ahead of the game. And I think this week there will be pretty good announcements about some really good successes we have in India right now, which is good. We're bringing that to the biggest market in the world.
That's huge. I'm so excited for you. So, Ori, this was amazing. I really am very passionate about your mission and what you're doing, and it's literally directly saving lives. And I wish you only the best. Thank you so much for joining Habaita.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.